We're in a technology set of change here, and it's not just on energy. So I want to make sure I put it in context to you. And so this is a McKinsey chart. By the way, I snag legally other people's charts, colorful ones that you can understand. And you can see that they label this the 12 most disruptive technologies. And I'm just going to flip through a couple of them. Renewable energy, of course, is on the top left. And advanced materials. I want you to think about something. The reason we can have offshore wind turbines where water is 700 times more dense than wind, with salt and acid and animals that stick to it, we have materials now, which we didn't have 10 years ago, that can last 40 years in the water, right? And marine and tidal energy that's coming in. Energy storage, you know from your laptops and the cell phones and now the hybrid electric vehicles and now the electric vehicles. I work with 18 distinct different kinds of battery materials in my projects. And they are all unique and all wonderful. You're going to see more batteries integrated in everything we do in your lifetime. And of course, all the internet side, cloud technology, Internet of Things, automation, knowledge network, mobile internet. Well, it's interesting. Part of my job is to power these networks. I do data centers and cell towers and phone switching and all that. But at the same time, I use that network to monitor my projects. I finished a project on the island of Cebu in the Philippines. I can tell how that renewable system is running that municipal water treatment plant and if there are problems and how to contact somebody to fix those problems on the other side of the planet. So this whole change of personalization of communication, cellular, personalization of information, the internet, and now we're moving into personalization of energy. This is a trend, a series of trends that are happening one after the other and rely on each other and will continue. It's fundamentally unstoppable. So as I see people who have sort of grayish hair on their head. I'm going to assume they're a little older. When we were younger, 100% of our grid were central station power plants, pumping electrons to transmission lines, going to substations where it's distributed to buildings and factories and all that. And 100% of those plants were made by the were built by the electric utility sector. Today, under 50% of all electric generation plants are built by the electric utility sector. It's actually private power companies that are producing our power, that are building the plant and signing long-term contracts with the electric utility, regardless of technology. Natural gas plants, even some of the newer small coal plants. Today, though, we've moved into a very, very different role, and we're going to change more dramatically over the next 25 years. And that is that you're going to have the power generation actually distributed. You will still have central station power plants, of course, but not as many. And you will have power along the transmission lines, power at the substations, power along the distribution lines, and power at the end of use on buildings and around buildings. And we're seeing that all over. And of course, I'm going to give you some statistics. But you're not just going to have power generation. You're going to have electric energy storage. You're going to have battery banks. We have gigawatts of batteries, thousands of megawatts of batteries in our utility system today. And it's accelerating exponentially. And it's economic. There are good reasons to do it. The big reason is power quality. And we're going to get to that issue in a different part of my little presentation here. So I love to use this chart. This is from DLR, which is the analytical group for Germany's NASA. But they did a study on renewable energy. And most people don't know this, and most people only focus on solar and wind. But the chart is, aside from being very colorful again, which I like colorful charts, we get over 2,800 times the energy we use per year from the sun. Now, obviously, we can't tap into all of that economically, but actually, you don't need to tap in economically to all but a very small percent of it. And so we have 200 times the wind energy we need every year rolling around the Earth. And by the way, it is windy somewhere right here. I actually have I have 2 buildings off the grid in Arlington, Virginia. I have a small wind turbine that blows almost every day. So, and it's 40 feet off the ground. So we have a lot of wind. More important, while those are considered somewhat the variable technologies, and we'll talk about that later, we have 20 times the biomass, and biomass is grown matter that is waste. This is not energy plantations. This is waste from animals, cattle, poultry, human beings, sewage. We have 1 million dead trees sitting in California right now, and they're either going to be forest fires or what? We have contaminated grains, we have food processing waste, we have lawn clippings. All of that turns into methane, a very potent greenhouse gas. Though shorter lived in the atmosphere, there's a lot of good reason to intercept that and turn it into renewable energy. By the way, 24-hour power. Geothermal, we have the 5 times the energy we need on this planet to tap the heat from the Earth, to create steam, to generate electricity, or run through heat engines. In fact, a great MIT study just came out to show that the United States could meet almost 10% conservatively of all our energy needs from geothermal, not just out west. The best geothermal fields are under the Appalachian Mountains here on the East Coast. I'm doing a project with Cornell University to tap the heat in upstate New York. It's an amazing resource. Hydropower, 1 times the Earth's need, and this is not even building new dams. This is just retrofitting dams. We have 88,000 dams in the United States, and let's just say for good stewardship, let's get rid of 1/3 of them, all right? So now we have about 50,000 dams that could be all retrofitted with turbines on it and generate power. Why not? 0 emissions, 24-hour power. And of course, wave and tidal is the sleeper. We have $18 billion of private sector investment going worldwide now in marine and tidal energy. The leaders are Scotland, Spain, Australia, Japan, the United States, and China. And you're going to see more. By the way, most of the world lives near the ocean, and it's 24-hour power. So when you hear all this stuff that renewables are variable, maybe, but not really. So we have a great resource base. So in 2016, 55% of all the planet's generation capacity, new generation capacity, meaning coming online in 2016, was renewable energy, was the blend I just talked to you about. And that is a change. I wasn't sure I was ever going to be alive to see this day. I am. You're my witness. So that is the fact. In 2016, 22 gigawatts, 22 nuclear power plants came online in the United States of America. And it's mostly driven by state policies, not national policy, mostly. So we are on a trend that actually will not change. And so this is one of the sustainable energy reports from Bloomberg that came out, but combined heat and power, waste heat from buildings, renewable energy, now 20% of US power, of course natural gas too, but energy efficiency. And this little box up there, when I started this field in the 1970s, every economist said, you cannot grow economically without using more energy. And there was this guy, Amory Lovins, and he said, no, actually, if you're more efficient with energy, your economy will grow more. And he was ridiculed by most of the economists at the time. And in fact, Amory was 100% right. And this, in fact, from 2007 to 2015, the US economy grew 10%, and our energy went down 2.4%. Being more efficient with energy and water is going to be a main economic driver for the modern economies. Wasting energy and water is not the answer, no matter what some of the politicians think. So these are the jobs globally. This is out of using 2014 data. so it's not 100% accurate. Actually, 2013 data, sorry. 6.5 million jobs in 4 years ago. Solar photovoltaics, solar electric panels, the top. A little over 2 million. Liquid biofuels, wind, solid biomass, and solar heating and cooling, biogas, and that's anaerobic digestion, mostly of manures and sewage, geothermal, small hydropower, and concentrated solar power, which I'll show you, which is 24-hour power. It uses heat. They're in the deserts. So globally, it's starting to become a force in job creation. In the United States, for the first time, it happened in 2015, solar jobs surpassed oil and gas extraction jobs in the United States of America. Almost unthinkable. When I was working in the US Senate in the 1970s and talk like that, I mean, people would roll over laughing. But in fact, here it is. I would have never thought it would happen. So these are, this is out of Forbes. They're statistical using Department of Energy data. So this is sort of the job comparisons of solar photovoltaics and concentrated solar compared to oil, coal, natural gas, wind, and nuclear. And this is the United States of America only. So we're on a trend on job creation. And by the way, energy efficiency, I tell my classes this, I want to remind you this. It is always less expensive to save energy than to generate it from any source. So LED light bulbs and insulation and smart windows, smart motors for manufacturing, advanced controls to match your needs with your energy. This is what's also driving our economy. And as you can see, you know, there's a huge number of employment jobs out of this energy efficiency in every state in our country. And this is absolutely cost effective. In my house and in my office building in Arlington, I use 58% less electricity than any other building in North Arlington. It has paid for itself in from 2 to 4 years. And I've done it 2 decades ago. And so the point is, it makes a lot of sense. I don't understand why people don't do it as they're renovating, building. It just makes sense. So these different technologies, forget the cents per kilowatt hour, but look at that brown band. This is where the different renewables are sort of coming and being cost effective, you know, conservatively in the brown band. So biomass, almost all in the brown band, geothermal, almost all, hydro, all, except for some of the newer free flow hydro stuff. Solar photovoltaics, it's the utility scale stuff is in the brown bag. Concentrated solar, still a little high from that, but in the deserts, it's actually quite cost effective. Wind offshore, about 50-50, wind onshore, 100%. And look, there's some of these below the brown band, biomass, hydro, and wind onshore that actually is less than any kind of natural gas plant you can build today. That's the point. And so anybody thinks this is more expensive doesn't understand. So we're talking about Puerto Rico, and I just had an article published on this. There's a big move towards microgrids. You understand what big grids are, that's what your service is. But there's more and more gigawatts worth, by the way, in the United States, Europe, and Japan to actually do very small regional or corporate campus or institutional campus grids. That's my business, really. Blending all these different technologies together for buildings, interacting with the grid, having different kinds of storage, batteries, flywheels, ultracapacitors, compressed air and liquids, even hydrogen, and then different kinds of generation on site, and maximizing, elegantly blending them together. And this is a big trend and very lucrative, but it brings you much more reliable power. I'm going to skip some things at the base of time. I get all the time, in fact, it's one of the things, other than having a daughter, that's made me bald. I get people say, well, if the stuff is so good, why do you have to subsidize it? And I go, well, we are subsidizing fossil fuels out of your tax dollars, $70 billion a year. By the way, nuclear, $65 billion a year. So yeah, we have around $10 billion for renewables, and of course the ag lobby does ethanol, but it's a subsidy. If we subsidize dial phones, do you think we would have cellular today? And so the point being is we have a system where the good old boys keep getting their money. Congress will never give it up because we have the best legislature money can buy, and which is fine. But so a lot of us have said, all right, in order to compete in the market, we need to attract some capital. This is how we get investment capital. I always tell them, if you get rid of that $70 billion a year, actually it's $135 billion if you include nuclear, then you don't have to give renewable subsidies. You can zero them all out at once. They will never ever do it. I promise you, they will never ever do it. And I'm going to skip some time. Don't hate me. So I give my students 34 studies on renewable energy, and I will have my email. My business card is there if you want them. I'll send them to you, the links. And that's, if you take a look at these 34 studies, say with technology we have today, we can meet economically all or most of our energy needs with a blend of high-value energy efficiency, storage, and the complete portfolio of renewable energy. We can meet it economically with technology we have today. So I had my grad students, by the way, grad students are the only kind of legalized slavery we have in the United States of America, so they had to do this. They actually had to read these 34 studies. I said, I want the most conservative estimates, and I'm going to show you that in a second. But this is one that the national laboratories did, basically saying, I want to do 60 or 80% carbon reductions. How do we get there? And in the United States of America, which is basically a renewable energy future. And the top wedge, that purple, is energy efficiency, because it's lower cost and it's faster. And then it has what in their view, wind, biofuels, biomass, photovoltaics, concentrated solar and geothermal. They didn't have the marine tidal or waste heat or some of the other things. And that's how they came to that economically. That's the national labs taking a look at it. This is the sum of the 34 studies, and it equals a little more than 100%, of course. And if the United States want to be totally on renewable energy, following that same wedge with energy efficiency, it would be biomass power. These are, again, wastes that are in our environment. By the way, we have to do something with them. They normally pollute our groundwater and our land, but let's say we're going to take them out now and use them valuably. The building renewables, and here I mean more geothermal heat pumps, solar daylighting, those kinds of technologies could meet 12% of our load. Geothermal, I already told you, could conservatively meet 10%. Concentrated solar in the deserts, 24-hour power. Distributed solar, and that's photovoltaic technology on buildings and around buildings and at substations. Waste heat, by the way, what? Nuclear, coal, heavy oil, natural gas have all in common is we're boiling water. We're creating steam to generate electricity. We have in the United States of America, we're an industrialized country. We have huge industrial complex. We manufacture things. We have foundries, we have electroplaning plants, and guess what they put in the atmosphere? High temperature heat and steam. Well, why not just tap it and turn it into electricity? You already got the steam. You just have to put it to a steam generator. And that, by the way, absolutely cost effective. Why build multi-billion-dollar plants when you got the steam already there? So that's 8%. Conservatively, Oak Ridge National Lab said it's more practically at 18%, almost 20% of our energy from that. Water energy, tidal wave, free flow hydro. This doesn't even have anything to do with dams. And then wind energy. And again, wind mostly blows at night. So that's one of the issues. But that meets more than 100% of our energy. All of that's economic. And the United States has huge resources in it. So this is a great study. And this study shows that 32 states, with the renewable resources they have, economically, all right, can meet this much of their energy needs. And you can see a large part of the United States can meet most of their energy, including Alaska and Hawaii, with that. This does not have offshore wind or tidal and wave. If you add that to it, states like New York, Georgia, Florida could also be 100% or over. So, but we again have a transmission grid, meaning we could make it up for the others. We have plenty to spare. So, and I just want to, to point out that this is conservatively, Maryland can meet 40%. That's not offshore wind. With offshore wind, it's up to 60, and Virginia is at 177%. I'm sure I convinced them to share a little over there here in Maryland. So just to give you a sense of what's going on. This is solar photovoltaic deployment in the northern, sort of in the region here, Virginia and Maryland, District of Columbia. And this is the amount of megawatts we have in there. Of course, you can see the top, Virginia has very little because Virginia has no incentives. We have a very powerful utility company that doesn't really want us to have it. And then, as you see, Maryland is the lead in the region with megawatts in there, 35, 43, and then the District of Columbia. So that's sort of what the region's doing in solar deployment right here. You'll see that will go way up over the next few years. And then this is 2013 is when this started really picking up, in 2014, and so in some of the counties, and you'll see more of that as we increase. One of the drivers in national policy are really driven by the states, and these are called renewable portfolio standards. And just like a bank is required to keep a portfolio of investments, they can't have it all in junk bonds, right? They have to have a spread. It's regulated. What state utility commissions are saying is for new electricity, you need to meet certain mixes by certain years. We don't care what the mix is, but you as utilities have to mix generation. We don't want all our generation on one resource. I 100% agree with that, including one kind of renewable resource. You want it spread. So these are the different, we have actually 30 states now. Georgia has just come in with mandates and 5 with sort of regulated goals. So we have 35 of the 50 states driving the percentage, and they're all sort of driving to get it over 20%. And then the markets fundamentally will take over on their own. So that's been a big driver nationally. And so this goes through 2016 on terms of the percentages of renewables coming in, and the red marks are renewable on the right graph on renewables under development. I'm going to skip some of these because I want to get questions. I want to show you some pictures. There are 100 towns in Japan, this is before Fukushima, that meet 100% of their electricity with renewable energy. This town, every building has solar water heating, photovoltaics, batteries, geothermal heat pumps, highest grade of efficiency, and every single building then exceeds their need and sends electricity to run the signal lights, the municipal water and treatment plants, the sewage plant, all the infrastructure. And so with technology we have today. So, and this was before Fukushima meltdown. This is a company outside of Philly that does prefabbed houses. They are moved to on-site, 3,500 square foot buildings for $185,000 that when they drop them down, you can move in the next day. They produce all their energy. Solar water heating, photovoltaics, Batteries, same thing, geothermal heat pumps. It's phenomenal. And this is my office building. This has solar. You can barely see the wind turbine on behind it, has battery banks, and has a fuel cell behind it. This is the new Tesla shingles. These are the solar shingles. They come in different designs. And actually, when you're getting to replace your shingles, you'll put new ones on it. I got invited to their debut, and I was in one of the Tesla showrooms. They were doing it, and I asked if it's breakable, and they go, no, and I'm throwing it out like Frisbees on the floor. They didn't break. And one of the reasons this makes sense is over 50% of our buildings are controlled by homeowner associations. And 99% of them ban this stuff. And so this way, it's going to be very hard for them to ban it because it's just a shingle. So that's new technology. And then I'm going to take 5 minutes, sadly, because I don't have this is what we're doing in Arlington. We're getting rid of our peak power, our higher cost power in the entire county through energy efficiency, waste heat, white roofs, and solar, water heating, and photovoltaics. Building performance, that's our labels for buildings, so you know how much carbon they're saving. Solar daylighting, I'm skipping a bunch of stuff, battery banks, electrochromic glass, solar water heating, solar air conditioning. This is Hurricane Andrew in Florida. All the roofs are ripped off, but the solar lighting systems on the streets worked. These are solar cell towers I use around the world with solar and wind. These are deployable systems I use for the military, forward operating bases, Homeland Security, let me see. These are the solar power towers in California that produce 24-hour solar power. These are concentrated solar, another kind of concentrated solar in Arizona. This is the 280 megawatt Abengoa project in Arizona. Again, 24-hour solar. This is Nevada Solar One, Boulder City, 24-hour solar. This is 14 megawatts at Nellis Air Force Base. This is a 579 megawatt solar plant, just came online in California. This is one of the largest in the world, 579 megawatts, half a nuclear power plant. And this one is a 550 megawatt Topaz that just came online also in California. I'm going to end up by saying when I started in this field, you had to guess, you had to do on-site measurement of your solar or your wind data. Now we have companies, about 11 of them worldwide. This company, 3 tiers out of Seattle, 40 PhD hydrologists, oceanographers, and meteorologists with supercomputers. They can tell you how much solar and wind and water you have on any latitude, longitude on this planet. I did a project in Somalia. I needed to know where wind was. The locals said there's no wind. I needed wind. And I send them my satellite phone where I am, and they go, 85 feet up, there's all the wind you ever need. And the locals are shaking their head at this guy, and it's been running every damn day up there, solar and wind. So we can do that. We have companies now that make software using Google Maps, and I can go anywhere in the world. I don't have to go there. I don't have to send anybody there. I can see what's on the roof and where the best place to put the solar panels on, where it gets the sun seasonally, what other aberrations are there. So I'm going to end it there. We are on one planet. I have a great story, but I don't want to waste time because I have a very short time on that. But there are no dumb questions, meaning you can email me. I will answer every question. I will send you lists of whatever. And I do invite you, now today there's the National Solar Home Tour, and I guess you're not going to be able to come to Arlington, but I do tours once a week. I have 2 buildings off the grid. I'm happy to have you anytime, do tours, and see how these real technologies in place. And with that, I'll take questions.
Thank you.
Whoa.
Do you think that your work with the military may be providing some inroads to waking up the government, the federal government?
Yeah, actually, the U.S. military has been a leader in integrating renewable energy technologies. It started with forward operating bases and then has moved to make regular military bases more resilient. It's a big part of my business. So they're the leaders because they understand resiliency. They really understand it. So yes, it is making inroads, and even though the current administration isn't big on this stuff, it happens to be the new Secretary of Defense is, and so DoD is not changing its stance. It's just moving straight ahead. So it is making inroads. We have somebody over there.
What?
So I just,
Oh.
I have a quick question. I don't really understand the economics of a lot of this, but to me, solar seems sort of like a slam dunk, because it scales nicely from a home to a factory
Yeah.
to a farm, and the costs are sort of predictable. And in the case of a house, the cost benefit, the benefits from the cost come directly to the person who does the investing.
Correct.
So you get around a big political issue.
Correct.
Now, what I'm wondering about is something like biomass, which you pointed out is a large thing. I can't see how you can get like individual householders doing their biomass.
No, it's not an individual household. That's
So-
for industry or utility.
Right.
Right.
So for there, the question becomes the initial cost and how long it's going to be to advertise. And I don't know if it's practical or not.
Very.
Very,
Very.
okay.
Yeah. Because remember, your taxpayer dollar is dealing with that biomass right now. And you're just making it inert rather than making money from it. And I'm a big believer is you do not make waste inert. You make it have value, economic value. So. Yes, sir.
Again, from the homeowner's perspective, beyond electrical generation, most of us around here use natural gas or something else. Actually, in my neighborhood, they burn wood.
Right.
I was just wondering about the retrofitting to all electric then for homeowners and how, I mean, that's a big expense and a hurdle to get over.
Well, I mean, I use a geothermal heat pump, so I have radiators in my house, which is natural gas, and now the geothermal heat pump provides the heat to my radiators. So, you can integrate these systems. I do it every single day. It's not a big problem. And the issue is, of course, when natural gas is low, you go, why you want to do it? Natural gas will not always be low, and then that's usually the motivator.
Yeah, and geothermal, at least when I looked at pricing, it was not cheap.
Geothermal paid for mine in my home in 4.5 years. I use 67% less electricity for air conditioning than any other kind of air conditioning in the market. It's hugely economic.
So what happens to the battery solar panels that are on the roofs? What happens when they're finished?
Well, first of all, for photovoltaics, they're warranted for 25 years. I put my first set of photovoltaics on in 1985, so 32 years ago. They're working just great. I got invited to the Jet Propulsion Lab to look at their photovoltaic system installed in 1967. Now that was 2 years ago, 48 years. They're working just fine. But fundamentally, it's silicon. It can be recycled just like anything else could be recycled. And most of the major manufacturers actually pay, you have to sign when you buy it, that you allow it to be recycled.
How about car batteries?
Car batteries are now 97.8% recycled. These are slightly different. These are most of the batteries tied to renewable systems are sealed batteries, but are higher output batteries. And I use absorbed glass matrix batteries. My last set lasted 15 years. I just put 2 years ago the new set in. I hope they'll last 15 years. And I recycle them. You just send them either I call the company, and 9/10 of the companies will come and pick them up from you because it's cheaper to recycle the batteries than mine the stuff.
But they're that's fine, they can pick it up, but they can recycle it? It's reusable?
Oh, they use it it's cheaper to use the materials inside the batteries from a recycled battery than mine it in Peru. Yes.
Okay.
no question about it. Sir?
So, how many of your projects are coming online that are impacted by ecological impact studies or other local issues that come up with? I know in Canada, we've camped there a lot. There was a big wind farm put up there, but it took years to resolve some of the migration issues.
Sure. Well, for wind, yeah, I mean, there are studies on bird migration. There are now wind turbines that can be slowed down. We're doing it in West Virginia now, so when the bats come out about 4 o'clock, the wind turbines slow down to just a tiny turn until the bat streams go through for their 40-minute window. And, you can do that, and we're doing that, so no question. Again, we lose about 400,000 birds a year with wind. We lose 5 million with cats, and we lose 3 million with building windows. So we should mitigate birds, but they're not a big bird issue. But yeah, we got to do it. Solar too. I don't want solar on wetlands, for instance. We want the wetlands to absorb water and things. So there are places you don't put renewable energy, and I'm very comfortable with that. But is it a big driver? No, I don't think so. Sir?
A couple quick science questions.
Sure.
So the 24-hour solar factory, can you just say briefly, how do you get 24 hours solar when the sun's...
Well, the power towers, they use mirrors, we call heliostats, and you're using molten nitrite salts. And basically when heat hits it, it turns to liquid, goes into a vat, and either creates steam if there's water. If there's no water in the desert, you use a heat engine, and it turns a generator. And it holds that heat through the night. For the trough technology, you have a glass tube, big one, filled with a synthetic liquid basically that does the same thing. It's solar photovoltaic pump that liquid in front of these troughs. It's 1,700 degrees and takes about all night to cool off and not do it. So you're using a medium to generate your power at night.
The other question is, I understand with geothermal how there's if you can explain that very briefly, it's a pipe that goes down in the earth.
Yes.
It's colder down there, so there it comes back colder.
No, it's hotter down there. It's 9,000 degrees in the middle of the planet. Very warm. You don't want to move there. And you have molten rock and you have water. You have water going through the entire planet, which, by the way, the frackers don't understand. Water goes through from the low parts all the way up. And so you tap into that heat. You can tap the heat from the hot rock. You can tap it mostly from the water, which is what they look for. Sort of why you get geysers, but you don't need geysers. And you get this superheated water that's, has lost heat from the 9,000 degrees, but it's still as hot as anything else you need. And you just generate heat.
So it's like to go below the permafrost, and then how far down do you have to go?
Well, it's really different. I mean, in Nevada, it's probably a half a mile. And in northern New York, we're going down a mile. Some of them are 3 miles, so it depends. What? Excuse me? Oh, well, that's this one. I'm not tapping in the heat. For geothermal heat pumps are different. There, I'm exchanging the heat. This is a great thing. This is so much fun. And I'm using a refrigerant kind of geothermal. I want you to think of a refrigerator. A building is an insulated box like a refrigerator. I'm using a heat pump with refrigerant tubes to move the heat out of the box. That's why it's colder. You move more heat out of the box, it's a freezer. I'm just moving the heat from my house in the summer into the ground. And I'm cool. I'm just moving. I'm transferring the heat. It actually goes on its own. It just goes on the refrigerant tubes because that's where the heat moves, and it moves always to a colder place, and it goes in the ground. It's just great. I don't understand why everybody isn't doing that.
So Scott, on that note,
I know I have to end. Thank you very much.
No, I have one
Send me
question.
an email.
I was going to give you a closing question.
Oh, a closing question? I'll take it.
No. I'm going to.
Oh, you're going to get the
person
closing.
with the microphone.
Deal.
So, you're talking about these big, large-scale solutions, which are really exciting. So when you bring it down to the homeowner level, which
Yeah.
is the level you're at, so just very quick, because we only have, a minute left, what are the top couple of things that homeowners can do in our own individual homes for greatest impact? Because we hear about a lot of options.
For solar, solar daylighting, bringing natural light with reflectors and concentrators without the heat. By the way, Best Buy and Walmart do solar daylighting in all their new buildings, and purchasing goes up 11% the day after they put it in. Peer-reviewed studies should show that students get sick less in solar daylit schools and workers are more productive. I love the technology. We have a lot of vendors in this region. Solar water heating, absolutely cost effective. I love the technology. I have it on my home. I use it all over the place. And then photovoltaics, you can get it leased, and there are a lot of great companies that basically you pay a monthly fee for the lease, and it will be less than what you'll pay for electricity from the utility company. The bad part of that, of course, is when the grid goes down, you have thousands of dollars worth of stuff on your roof, and you go down too. I live in Arlington, Virginia. We have a tree canopy, and the trees knock down these lines all the damn time. So I started very early saying, I want a small battery bank. You don't have to power the whole home. You can do a tiny solar system with a few batteries. Run your sump pumps in your basement, your refrigerator, your electronic ignition on your stove, your Wi-Fi connection, a couple of plugs, a couple of LED lights. You could ride out a storm pretty easily for a long time with under $5,000 investment. So there's a lot of things you can do. And again, and a lot of it's really perfect when either an appliance like a water heater goes out or you're doing a small renovation. Again, I do not do residential, but I'm happy to be a guide for you on where you go and who you ask for and how you get the information. So again, thanks again.